Hi, it's 7 p.m. Pacific Daylight Saving Time. I'll read some more of The Adventures of Rebazar Tarz. New Book 4 by Dwayne the Great Writer. The Church has always known the basic psychological position of the masses and has used it against people for the sake of their evil control. I learned so much about all the cruelty and how the religious orders have purposely instigated their followers into wars for the purpose of personal profit and political takeovers. Like I have said, I always knew there had to be so much more than what I had come to know on the earth. On earth today, the systems are using oil for bartering and making wars to support their cause and telling the public it is all about democracy. I prayed and prayed for something to appear, but it never seemed to according to what I thought it should be. Yet I was still having these interesting dreams I knew nothing about. Then one day I decided to go and see this lady that I had heard about from some friends of mine who supposedly could see things that other people could not. Well, I was reluctant at first because I didn't want my parents or anyone else to know, but I finally took the chance and went late one night while my parents were at a 3-day secret conference that even I couldn't go to. I went and met this lady that I will call Mary. When I went up to the door, I was very nervous because I had been taught that people like her were evil and of the devil. But I really didn't accept that idea because I already knew the religious orders were totally evil. And so how could one person that provides information about something possibly true be evil? I didn't buy it and decided to take a chance and see for myself. I finally got the nerve to knock on the door, and as I was about to knock, she opened the door and called me by name. I was so startled that I started to giggle, which helped me relax. As I walked into her house, I felt as though I were at home. Mary was a wonderful and very sincere person. My first meeting with her was very revealing. First, she told me things that only I knew about to show me she was a real seer. Then I began to ask her questions about my life and why I was here. She told me that I had a very special mission like no one else's, but that it would take some time to become apparent to me. I asked her about the faith that I had and belonged to, and that I felt something was missing with all that I knew. She told me there were very special guides that were teaching me what I would need to know, and that is when I asked her about my dreams. She said that these unseen guides were taking me to very real and special schools that were hidden from the profane minds of the dark side. Mary said that what they were teaching was even beyond what even she knew, but that I was to continue on with my life as it is, and eventually everything would be revealed to me. She said that it would be years before the public was ready for what these special guides would reveal, because the outer awareness of the public was not ready yet, but it was being prepared for it. I started seeing Mary a lot, at least 3 or 4 times a week. I began to write a diary of my dreams and what she told me they meant. Your friend Rebazar was one of the beings that I would meet in my dreams, along with another fellow that was with him a lot, Gopal Das, a beautiful blonde being, she said as she took a breath. This is great, Shar, but why do you think Rebazar would consider destroying you? I asked. Let me explain, because there is a lot more to all of this. As time went on, I was being shown what was going to take place on the earth and the person that would have the greatest impact on history ever. Your friend and teacher, Paul Twitchell. I was shown the time track from these special guides and certain events that would be coming into play in the future. At the same time, I overheard my parents talking about an earth-shattering event that would take place from the astrologers and seers they knew, which I didn't even know they knew any such people. It was late one night, and they thought I was asleep, but I had to get up for a sore throat to get something for it, and their bedroom door was open, and so I heard them talking about some predictions and what was going to be done about them. I was very curious, so I quietly listened. Because I was seeing Mary all the time, and all of this seemed to tie in. My parents' evil seers predicted that a very bothersome individual would appear on the public scene around 1965, but wouldn't become known to the world for at least 2 or 3 years after that. I heard my father say that when this person appears, he would be taken care of by those he knew. Even though my parents were very loving to me, they were very devoted to the higher-ups that ran the systems of the world. They really didn't totally see how they were worshiping the evilness of the three-headed God. What is so humorous about all of this is the fact that the real truth about what is taking place on the earth seems like science fiction, and the public has been so beaten down with illusion that only all the illusions they look to seem so real to them. And so it has all come to what life on earth is today. A love for all the phenomena that is produced. Prior to Paul Twitchell appearing, my parents were very old. My father had a stroke and then died 2 days later. Within 2 months, my mother also passed away, because she was so saddened by the death of my father that she just walked around most of the time like a zombie. After my mother left her body, I kind of wondered for a while what to do with my life. One night I had this dream that showed me where my parents went. In the dream I was watching them being taken before a type of judge and sentenced. I couldn't hear what was being said, but the impression was I knew they had to pay for what they had been involved in. In this type of courtroom they were in, as they stood and waited, several entities came in that were all in black and took them away. Later, from Mary, I found out who these strange creatures were. She told me that they were called the Deceptors, and that they were under the control of the Supreme Being, Callum. She said the Callum wanted my parents and eventually me too. I told her about the doctrines that I knew about and had read when my parents were around, and so she and I kept exploring all the possibilities, and we finally figured out what was taking place. Even after I knew about the three-headed God, which is recorded in the real history doctrines that the church has always kept hidden, it was still hard for me to believe that the God that all of humanity looks to, no matter what faith or country, is the same evil entity that plays both sides and pits everyone against each other to keep people confused and unaware. The Callum wants people to stay into reincarnation forever because it ensures his continued survival with all the agreements he gets. I wanted to do something for my parents when I found out what the Deceptors were doing with them. Mary told me that it is very rare that the Deceptors come into the arena of the Lords of Karma unless it is for a purpose. The Callum god wanted my parents to work with him because of all the connections my parents had. I found out from Mary that my parents did not want anything to do with Callum, but he blackmailed them into submitting to his demands, and so they have been captive with him ever since, she said. Can I ask how they blackmailed them, Shar? I asked. Callum threatened to destroy me, and so they gave in to him. After he got them to agree, they were put into a time frame where they are still prisoners to this day, working for him and influencing people against their will to stay unaware. I was shown to let my parents go through what they had to because of what they did on earth, but I was not really able to detach myself, and so I became very angry. The special guides and even Mary kept telling me to let go and things would eventually work out, but I was too stubborn and emotionally upset. I felt like a drug addict on a mission about all that I knew to be so wrong, and I wanted to correct it. I began a campaign against the rulers of the different systems. I knew a lot of people, and some of them did help me, but I did most of exposing what these evil people were doing myself. I wrote articles to newspapers and magazines. I did demonstrations and a lot of rather radical things that sometimes put me in jail for the night. I was being shown not to get too close, but I was on a mission to destroy the hiddenness of the belief systems. The last time I saw Mary was right before Paul Twitchell took the rod of power. She adamantly warned me to back off and not to attempt any more confrontation with the dark side, because they were watching me very closely and ready to pounce on me. She even yelled at me because she cared so much and said this would be my final warning. While I was with her that night, I was ready to finally let go because she told me she had the information from the special guides that were teaching me that I would soon be able to have the outer knowledge that I had been looking for. After being with her, I went home and just wanted to rest. I fell asleep, and then about midnight the phone rang and I got a call from a friend that told me some very disturbing news about an actual murder that was going to take place, because a very close friend of mine had information about certain corrupt American politicians that he was going to expose, and there already were plans to eliminate him and his family. I tried to call him and warn him, like others who knew him that had tried to call, but no one could get through to him. He only lived a few hours away, so I decided to drive there. I knew the man the dark side was going to kill very well, and I actually loved him. Well, I couldn't sleep at all after hearing what I did, and so I drove for hours to where he was at to try and warn him. I was driving very fast and rather reckless, along with my emotional attitude, and it was a heavy, rainy night that I should not have been out in, and in the process I lost control of my car and was also killed. When I crossed over into the astral world, I was immediately taken to a secret place instead of going through the standard process. Then I was transported into the mental worlds by the dark agents and taken before the Callum himself. He was very pleased to see me, because now he knew he had a very aware servant that would perform for him, because he had my parents as prisoners. You see, the Callum God loves blackmail. He loves to see people suffer, and so the intrigue of all that I had learned and went through while on earth was like a sultry seduction to him that he passionately adored, because the entire scenario of all that had taken place fell neatly into his hands. And so with all that I had learned and become aware of, he was very happy to have a new thrill in his life that could influence the unaware. If the Callum god cannot get what he wants through persuasion or force and cruelty, he resorts to seduction and sensual maneuverings and eventually blackmail, all of which so many people already agree to. Because of their emotional natures, so Callum doesn't need to put out too much effort to gain followers that are already unaware and willing to be subdued. Look at the earth today and how everything is business as usual and cleverly ployed by sensationalism and seduction. Very few people really care about what is really taking place with the deterioration of the planet. They only promote the idea to sell as a business ploy. There are people who do care, but they are usually shoved in the background and aligned with the opposite side of the marketing promoters, and so they are still under the spell of the Callum. I know about the funny business that you are into, Dwayne. Yours is unique because Rebazar and the real guides are promoting what you are doing for the new presentation. Everyone involved will benefit in the true sense, and that is having real freedom beyond the heavens of man. You and your friends really do care, and you see how hard it is to deal with the humanitarian grants and funds that apply, so that you can create your new health and awareness centers. You already know that most of the humanitarian money goes to feed needy people that are herded by the belief systems to gain more Callum followers, but under the guise of helping others. When such needy people are no longer needed, they will be eliminated by some form of invented plague or disease that there will supposedly be no cure for, like the invented AIDS disease. It is the ones that have courage and have gained a lot more awareness through personal experience that the Callum god really wants to worship him, because then he doesn't have to be concerned at all and lets his servants create for him. Then he can spend more time with all his endless supply of mistresses. Harold is an excellent example of how Callum emotionally takes over a person. Crony was picked by the Deceptors years before she even knew about the corporation that Gerald became the spiritual master of. They could see she wanted something big in her life to have in control, but at the time she didn't know how to get it. So the Deceptors brought her around a step at a time until they introduced her to Gerald. She was being prepared from her subconscious body through all the tap lines they put into her astral, causal, and mental bodies, while the physical mind and body just went along doing all the funny things humans do without any awareness of what is really taking place at all. Eventually, Crony easily seduced Gerald into her way of doing things, and so the influential head of the Callum took over her unaware soul and 5 bodies completely. This is why your friend Kathy sees her as she really is, a hideous lizard creature. All the things I know come from this level and are seen on the lower levels as the results of their beginning and then appearing into the material worlds. The Callum god does know many things, but he cannot touch or influence everything, especially when a person has met the real guides and been given the real connection to the sound light reality. Then it becomes harder for him. I will read some more of The Adventures of Rebazar Tarz, New Book 4 by Dwayne the Great Rider, tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. Pacific Daylight Saving Time. See ya.